We've got to become, right, mad lovers. We love madly. We love insanely. And that's the only sanity. Because sanity means to know who I am. And who I am is I'm a unique incarnation of the whole with the capacity to influence and transform the whole. That is who I am. That's sanity. That's the only sanity. The only sanity is to be a mad lover. And to know that reality is pulsating with Eros in every second. That's the conversation that I'm participating in every second. So I want to try, if we can, to get just the beginning of this talk to God conversation. Welcome, everyone. And I want to ask, just for everyone's forbearance for a moment, we're starting something new today. But I want to try and create the context a little more clearly for what we're doing. Like, where are we? What are we doing? What are we doing here? And I want to invoke kind of our classical context and then add a couple of pieces to it, because we are at a new moment of time. And it is a time which is of truly unimaginable importance. I can't imagine a time that's more important in terms of our potential to affect the present, what's happening right now, how what we do now impacts the past, and how what we do now moves backwards through time, and either lends relevancy and resonance and depth for all of the effort and all of the wonder and all of the sacrifice of the past. Everyone who's lived and died for the evolution of consciousness, for the evolution of love, for the evolution of value, everyone who's lived and died and given life up for value, for goodness, for truth, for beauty. Right? They've all passed the baton to us, and it's in our hands. And we're at this, what Rilke called a pivoting point in this time between worlds and time between stories. And we are the only voice of all future generations. All future generations. The entire future depends on us. Whether there will be a future and what the nature of that future is depends on us. All of the assumptions of the past don't hold. And I've known for many years that they wouldn't hold. And we've been talking about that, for 12, 15 years, quite intensely. And then for another 12, 15 years in another context before, and another 12, 15 years before. Right. I just had, by the way, my 93rd birthday. I look a little young for my age. And do I look well preserved? So this is a deep conversation, but it's all changed in the last years. It's all coming to fruition. Okay. So I want to try and set the context. So we've talked about before. That's part one. So I want to set the context. And then I want to go directly to our topic and to our code. I happened to glance at two essays this morning. One essay was a New York Times article, an interview with a gentleman named Curtis Yarvin, who until now has been considered a kind of, white nationalist, although he denies he's a white nationalist quite profoundly, and I think his denial is probably accurate. But kind of a fringe, kind of far right figure who's an intelligent spokesperson who says unimaginably uneven things, who's kind of an influence on people like, Vance, Anderson, Mark Anderson, right? Who's a kind of techno accelerationist on, Musk, on Peter Thiel, that kind of crowd. And all sorts of progressives are now doing dialogues with him, in kind of adjacent spaces to ours. So he's representing this sense that's been growing in the world that democracy as we know it, its age is past, that liberalism is insipid and weak, he's one of the people who talks about things, like or kind of meta themes, right, that are being echoed in Silicon Valley in the incoming administration. And he's kind of one voice. Then I read another column this morning, which I just happened to read, by a group of people who are all affiliated with each other. This particular person runs a newsletter, and she's a kind of a dear friend of one of Derek Parfit's key students, Sam Harris. All right, his wife, I believe Annika Harris, is a quite brilliant neuroscientist, and she writes, kind of musings on the world. She's a Bulgarian kind of scientist of the kind of postmodernist kind with strong humanistic kind of overtones. What Yarvin shares in common with this writer is that they're both claiming value and denying it at the same time. And as Yarvin basically makes clear that there are no actual eternal objects, if you will. There's nothing that's actually ultimately inherently real besides what we create in our minds. And the second writer, Popova, right, is equally clear. As she argues in a similar way to Yuval Harari for the importance of story, and cites Gary Snyder, who's a kind of, beatnik Zen writer, who was kind of the first generation of people who kind of went east and kind of formed in the mid to late 50s, together with Reich, kind of the ground of the 60s, and wrote for many years Snyder's kind of a fixture of kind of West Coast rethinking of reality, and he kind of skews, kind of far left. So you got this kind of far left and far right. And both writers take as a given that we have to ground ourselves in value and story, and both writers take as a given that they're made up. But that's not going to work. Right? That is the recipe for existential risk. It's not going to work. It has no chance of working. It can't work. When Donald Trump speaks, a couple of days ago, after this very, very tragic moment in the United States where a plane crashes into a helicopter and everyone dies. And then, Trump, reads out loud, this, something that his speechwriters wrote, but, they went into the cold, icy waters of the Potomac, but we know they didn't end there. They went from there into the, arms of a warm and loving God, which somebody wrote for him. I mean, literally, like he kind of went a little cold then. He didn't quite believe him. What was he? He himself didn't quite know what he was talking about. And then you move from there to an interview that Obama does in 2004, right? Barack Obama, before he's elected, with a person writing on religion. And it's quite clear from the interview that Obama is a kind of values-driven postmodern reductionist who also believes that values are made up, which is why he endorses, for example, Harari's book so dramatically. It's like, does everyone get what's happening? In other words, we have basically this moment in time in which we're at a time between worlds and we're at a time between stories. We have an impending sense of existential risk, which is so serious. It's so real. And at this point, I'm kind of out of patience with people who haven't actually looked at the hard facts and think it's not real. It's more real than you can imagine. Right? And is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 20? We don't. But the threat of existential risk, which is either the death of humanity or the death of our humanity, is more real than you can imagine. There was a period, I don't know if you noticed, about a year and a half ago in the press, in all of the major mainstream press outlets around the world, there was serious writing by the serious inside scientific leaders in the artificial intelligence communities. There was serious writing about the existential risk of artificial intelligence unbound. I'm not going to go down that road now. I'm not going to go down Nick Bostrom's book, Superintelligence, or Toby Ord's book, The Precipice, or Derek Parfit's original writing, or Eliezer's, kind of important writing. I'm not going to go down, or I could name now literally 10 other serious insider players, right, who are the leading scientists. So there were about 6 or 7 or 8 months where literally there were, for the first time, existential risk went mainstream, and there was this recognition there's something real that actually we should be quite concerned about here. And it's the most serious form of both forms of existential risk it could cause: the death of humanity under multiple scenarios, or the death of our humanity, a kind of values lock-in in which the entire world is locked in by the first power, very possibly China, that gets artificial general intelligence and basically is able to then, because the entire world is wired and interconnected and interplayed, right, the exponential advances that would be made by an artificial general intelligence in a very short period of time would mean that whoever gets to AGI first, right, does essentially a values lock-in. That's going to be, you won't be able to undo it for 1,000 years. And Will MacAskill, right, writes quite intelligently about this in his book, something like What Do We Owe the Future? MacAskill is also a student of Derek Parfit. And this is it's one example of about 10 vectors, of which climate is number 8 or 9 or 10. And then all of a sudden, I don't know who noticed, all of a sudden it just disappears. It's gone. All of those articles are gone. They literally, within a period of a couple of weeks, disappeared. The effective altruism people kind of who were on the board of OpenAI were thrown off. All the brakes were essentially taken off, right, of, the artificial intelligence kind of arms race. And China and the United States pitted against each other even more dramatically. What an absurd thing to do on this one planet, which is one breath and which is one love and one heart. And the race to the bottom, right, continued unabated, with implications that are unimaginable. And no one's talking about it. You're not allowed to talk about it anymore. No more articles. It's gone. It literally was just taken out of the conversation. Like, So we're at this very strange moment. The amount of young Westerners, right, who don't believe, right, if you look at the Pew studies, PEW studies, who don't believe that democracy is necessary for the future, who basically think, oh, democracy, it's an interesting option, but, many other, viable, serious alternatives we should be taking very seriously, right? Who are thinking in all sorts of other terms based on extremely important critiques of democracy. We have an oral essays book we're about to put out. I think it's on democracy, right? On the 6 or 7 major problems with democracy as it exists now. Democracy as it exists now should be critiqued, but it should be evolved, not replaced. Just like gender. Gender should be evolved, but you don't kill the category. So what's happened is there's no center, right? It's what the poet meant when the poet said, the center will not hold. The best lack all conviction, the worst are filled with passionate intensity, right? So surely some revelation must be at hand, writes the poet. And at the core of the revelation is what we're doing here in One Mountain. What we're doing here in One Mountain, right, is we're saying not, there's an old joke, which is, you can walk on the left side of the road or the right side of the road, and only an ass walks in the middle of the road. That's exactly not what we don't need to do now. We don't need an insipid, flaccid, and I can't think of any other adjectives right now, but you get the idea, kind of centrist, kind of moderate. That's not what we need. We need a radical, alive, pulsating, artistic, vibrant, erotic, religious, spiritual passion at the very center that embraces the best intuitions of a holy atheism and the best intuitions of a holy religionist, prayerful, divine communion, because each one of those has an intuition that's saying something that's holy and good. They need to be woven together into a larger whole that has such potency, that pulsates so clearly, that's so self-evidently good, true, and beautiful, that resonates in our bodies, hearts, and mind. Everything is at stake. Everything is at stake. We're at a moment that if we don't actually articulate a shared story of value that is recognizable to everyone across the planet, or the overwhelming majority of people, we know it immediately. We know it's truth in our bodies. We feel it. It's in our bellies. It's in our hearts. It's in our cells. It's in our toenails. It's not just a cognitive vision. It's not just a feeling heart vision, what's called the faith of the heart or the faith of the mind. It's the faith of the toenails. Like we feel it anthro-ontologically, anthro-human ontology for realsies. The for realsies lives in us. It's self-evidently true. We get the best of the correct rejections of all of the overreaches of religion and all of its dogmas. And we get the best of all of the overreaches of reductive materialism, right? Which destroys the field of value, both on the Yarvin side and the Popova side, right? And all of those possibilities, just like we reject kind of all of the absurd overreaches, right? Of the freeze framing of value in one community or at one moment. We actually recognize that there's a deeper story to tell, which is not a made-up story, but which is validated by the best information we have about science, about interior science and exterior science, about molecular biology, about the nature of evolution, right? About the best theories of value. We revise value theory in some deep and profound way, and everyone stops playing, right, kind of the same win-lose metrics game. Right. And we actually come together and we say, oh my God, the future is in the balance. We can do this. We can do this. We can tell a new story of value in which that which divides us is far less than that which unites us. That we're in a field of value together. And we can actually articulate the eternal objects, right? The first principles and first values in that field of value. And we take the human being enormously seriously, and we take God enormously seriously. And we reject the caricatures of humanity and the caricatures of divinity. And we begin to realize that there's a conversation in cosmos, and that conversation matters, and that conversation is everything. It's the center of everything, right? That is what we're here to do. That's what we're here to do, right? And I would stake my life, and I have. That's the single most important thing we can do at this moment in time. Right? Other than feeding the hungry person who's right next to me. Well, I always have to feed. Okay, but right, it's always, right? Love our people, feed our people, expand who our people are. For sure, we have to act in direct response to immediate suffering. There are missions to be done and that need to be done, and they're urgent, of course, yes. But that won't take us home. We need to do those, and we need to actually put everything we have. It's not a side project. It's not, how do I kind of fill up my time? It's like, this is where it happens. This is what matters. We put our attention on this. And I want to, and I apologize for this. I'm sorry to be so, so dramatic about it, but I'm just going to say it because I'm just going to say it. I believe with all my heart, but not as a belief, but based on everything I know and everything I've felt and everything I've read over the last, and I've been thinking about this kind of in a serious way. I don't want to exaggerate, for 45 years. Meaning in a serious way for 45 years. Okay, not a casual way, right? Another serious way, meaning 10 hours a day on a minimum day for 45 years. And I have a sense of, right, the domains of knowledge in the world. Right? So I want to say this, and I have tears in my eyes, and it doesn't quite make me joyous. It makes me ecstatically joyous. It also makes me ecstatically trembling, and it also terrifies me to no end. Right? But I believe that the coherent vision that we're gradually drawing together here, right, is one that is an accurate and appropriate shared story of value. out of which 1,000 flowers can bloom. That actually the kind of the 10 or so core principles, kind of the 10 or so core words, right, about the nature of value and the nature of first principles and values, about the nature of Eros, about the nature of the universe, about the nature of who we are. Or let me say it differently, right? Our core answers to where are we? Where do we live? What's the nature of our universe story? Who are we? Who am I? And then what ought I do? What needs to be done? Right? Our capacity to integrate certainty and uncertainty, direction, discernment, and at the same time, this utter rejection of dogma. To hold together utter humility and utter audacity. To have clear telos and to bow before the mystery. And to weave them together into what's called in the lineage a kufot, right? An utter humility and utter audacity, because we actually have a sense of both the omnicoherent cosmos we live in and the cloud of unknowing that we live in at the same time. That we actually can hold those together in our bodies as artists of she. That we have that here. We spend all our time on. And we need to articulate it at the next level. We need to write it coherently. We need more resources to write it more coherently. We need to speak it. We need to clarify it. We need to put it into reality. But this is what needs to be done. And in that we're holding, right, this unimaginable treasure, which is the object of the great treasure search in the world today. That is what we're holding. It's that real. And that doesn't mean that we're going to go impose it on the planet. It means we're going to share it in this open field and market, right, of depth and goodness, and let it resonate. And then let people come and tell us what we got wrong and clarify, and let's up-level it. Anything we got wrong, let's up-level, let's clarify. But the core is right. We got this. And it's if we understand where we really are today, we have to be desperate to fulfill it. It's no less desperate than the desperation of the lover for the beloved in the moments before explosion. We should be desperate. We're desperate because we see the faces of potential joy and potential suffering before us. We're desperate because we see the faces of actual joy and actual suffering before us. And we know that actually everything we do is generated from within the story that we live and the story of value that we live. And being able to revision what story means and what value means and what we mean by the divine, what we mean by the human being, and what we mean by a field of value, and what we mean by a grammar of value, what we mean by eternity and evolution moving together. We have that which is most precious. And we have to carry it together. So we have to be the fellowship of the ring in Tolkien. But the ring now is not the ring that needs to be destroyed and thrown into the burning fires, of Mount Doom. No, we need to respond to the doomers with a new vision of a shared human destiny. We need to transform this moment of fate into a moment of destiny. And we can do so by just this passionate, intense, tender, soft, measured yet beyond all measure, artistic commitment, right, to paint this painting together. That's just by way of hello. Does that make any sense to anybody? So we're going to begin today's series of conversations, maybe 3 or 4. And we want to clarify, right, something utterly critical in the space. And this is, it's exactly a model, right, for what we can be doing. Right? We have to prepare. We have to place our attention. Every move matters. So I want to just read something to you if I can. We said the practice of prayer, which is our topic. So the name of this series that we're going to do, this conversation we're going to have together, we're going to give it a name. And we want to do this in order to reweave, and we want to do this as a model of what does it mean to evolve the source code? What does it mean to reweave the fabric of culture and consciousness together with the deepest structures and intimations of knowing that we have, right? In which we're bowed before the mystery and yet filled with the audacity of knowing. We're in the cloud of unknowing, and we're in our core certainty of being in the core dignity of our lives. So we're going to talk about prayer. And the name of the series is Talk to God. It's not third person. I want to know it's not third person, not talking to God, evolutionary prayer. Those are all great. It's titles I've worked with before. No, it's like an imperative. Talk to God. Talk to God. Now, in order to say talk to God, what do we mean by God? What do we mean by talk? And what do we mean by to? So there's three big words there, and we'll have to work with all of them. But talk to God. And the practice of prayer, right now, I'm just kind of read the context that brought us together in this conversation. And our next few weeks are about this. The practice of prayer is crucial for our potency as human beings. To be activist human beings, to be in a process of evolution and transformation, where we emerge as the most noble, the most beautiful, right? The most alive, the most filled with creative desire, the most filled with goodness, right? The most filled with truth and beauty. To be all of that, we need prayer. Right? Neither the Yarvin or the Popova option, which takes value and prayer, right? And a field of value, inherent value, off the table, which makes story ultimately made up. Fantasy, but not in the best word of fantasy. Fantasy in the sense of, right, as Harari says, right, Harari, Popova, Harris, that whole group, delusion. It's mental breakdown, delusion in the dictionary. No, it's not a delusion. It's not a delusion. It's real. It's the most real thing we can orient. There's a North Star. We're in a field of value. We're in a story that has ultimacy. And we are chapters and we are verbs in that grammar. We are God's verbs in a universal grammar of value, which is an evolving grammar of value, and we are caused for its evolution. And that is the truth of our existence, that we actually have self-evident and direct knowing of. We have direct access. That is true. That is true. I stake my life on it. Right? I stake my life on it. But that is true. And many people have staked their lives on it and died for it. And died into the next dimension, the next part of the story. So we normally think that prayer takes us out. Prayer passes the buck. Prayer kind of turns towards the divine, and then we become passive or acquiescent. And this is precisely not what prayer is. Moreover, we think that prayer turns towards a certain vision of the divine. Either it's a kind of munificent goddess who fits into whatever our temperatured definition of hot is. So it's a hot goddess of some kind, or a sage crone goddess, but some munificent goddess, or it's some wise old man in the sky, and we implore them with our entreaty. And if he or she happens to be in a good mood, or we get the words right, or we get the formula right, and it's, and we're dressed right, and we have the right ritual, and it's a good hair day, then somehow our petition is rewarded. But of course, that's precisely not what prayer is. Prayer is a fundamental, here's the thing, prayer is a fundamental potency of human life. Prayer's a fundamental potency of human life. A dear friend of mine who grew up in a caricatured world of religion and God, and he rejected that God correctly. That's what we always mean when we say the God you don't believe in doesn't exist. Right? I reject the God that he rejected. But he said to me once, he said, Mark, I don't believe in God. That's not the God. It's the God that he rejected out of the caricature that was downloaded to him through culture. But he said, Mark, I don't believe in God, but I believe in prayer. I don't believe in God, but I believe in prayer. Okay, that's a good start. Right? I don't believe in the vision of God that he doesn't believe in either. But I want to get back kind of to the paradox. What's prayer? So here's the sentence. Prayer is a primary potency which potentiates human power. That's the context. Prayer is a primary human potency which potentiates human power. And we need prayer today. We need to pray. Right? To stay together, we need to pray together. To create coherency, we need to pray. We need not just to pray for the community, we need to pray in the community. We need the prayer of the community. And so we want to step in this week in One Mountain into the evolution of prayer as part of the primary personal and political potency needed in this time. And we need to liberate prayer from the entreaty to the God in the sky, right? That has nothing to do with reality itself, this God who demands obedience because that's this arbitrary divine will, the prayer that Popova caricatures and rejects, right? As does, kind of all of the reductive materialist liberal world. And we have to also liberate prayer from the far right prayer breakfasts who claim that prayer is owned by one version of Christian talk, and that only if you actually follow this particular version of this particular mode of Christian talk are you redeemed. And there's Muslim versions of that and Christian versions of that and Jewish versions of that as well, right? And there's Tibetan Buddhist versions of that, and there's lots of versions of prayer's only it's an exclusive conversation between us, those of us who have the right hair day and the right outfit, and believe exactly the right dogma and can talk in tongues in a particular way. We all can talk in tongues. So there's got to be a universal notion of prayer, which prayer is a primary human potency. And at this time between worlds and a time between stories, we need to pray together. We need to learn how to pray together. Okay? And we need a shared language of prayer. So, David, give us a code. Give us a short code. And let's just talk about prayer just a little bit. Let's just start this conversation.
This week's evolutionary love code. Talk to God because God wants to talk to you and you want to talk to God. That conversation is the purpose of creation. Talk to God because God wants to talk to you and you want to talk to God. That conversation is the purpose of creation. Back to you, Dr. Mark.
Thank you. This is exactly not a new dogma. It's exactly dharma. Dogma means a proclamation of faith without evidence, which ignores the data of interior sciences and ignores the data of exterior sciences, and is usually, splits off from the picture some enormous amount of that which is empirically verifiably true. Dharma is first principles and first values. Dharma is I integrate the best validated insight from all of the great systems of human gnosis, which include every experiment we can do and include every form of revelation that we can access, right? From every period in human history and every geography in human history across space and time. It's the opposite of dogma. Dharma is the opposite of dogma. By dharma, we mean the deepest intrinsic knowing, validated by all systems of human gnosis across space and time, woven together into a shared story of value. Without that shared story of value, we have no choice. We have no chance. We live not in a global world. We live in a local world. It's one world. It's one breath. Right? There's a little virus, which emerges from gain and function research done in labs in Wuhan, China. Somehow that virus escapes, and we now know that's what happened. Didn't happen from the wet markets, as the mainstream press claimed for a year and a half and derided anyone who said anything different. But actually very clearly today, right across all intelligence communities around the world, came from gain of functional research, right, in a Wuhan lab. And that little virus spread around the world. It didn't know national boundaries. It ignored it. So that's the nature of reality today, right? So we need now, right, a virus. We need a new virus, but it's a new virus of gnosis. It's a new virus of outrageous love. But it's outrageous love rooted in the deepest knowings we have, which means we have to pay attention. Don't scroll through quickly. Read deeply. Read slowly, right? Pay attention. We place our attention on this new Dharma, and we become this pulsating, breathing, erotic, in the sense of the 12 billion years of Eros before there was any sex. Alive, right? Emergent art. The new Dharma, the new set of first principles and first values are not dogmatically declared. They're the natural artistic emergence, right, of reality. You know, the old word faith comes from the original Hebrew word, which means trust and art, and the breast of the nursing mother. That's the word amen, which means faith. Amen actually means the original Hebrew trust, means the baby who nurses at the breast of the mother, and it means the artist. So there's this new form. We're the artists of the new Dharma. We're the artists of the new first principles and first values, which emerge out of the best validated insights of the interior and exterior sciences. Okay. It's the exact opposite of dogma. It's exactly what dogma's not. Okay. So now, let's take a look. Let's take a look at this code. Talk to God. Okay, it's just I'm going to go and this is the first of like maybe 3, 4, 5 conversations. Okay? And I want to go just kind of really, really clear, just super short, super clear. Okay? This is so beautiful. It's so desperate also. It's so alive. It's so true. And it's not ordinary. It's not wisdotainment. It's not I clicked on for a nice conversation and got a little information. Oh, I'm gonna work on kind of healing the meta crisis. This is my 2 hours a week that I devote to the meta crisis, and let me spend the rest of my week doing God knows what. This has got to be the center of our passion, the center of our focus. We're madly in love with reality. We're going to save the climate by being madly in love with reality. We're going to save the world by being mad lovers of reality. Ordinary love, cognition, filling up our time, pseudo-eros won't get us there. We've got to become, right, mad lovers. We love not ordinary. We love madly. We love insanely. And that's the only sanity, because sanity means to know who I am. And who I am is I'm a unique incarnation of the whole with the capacity to influence and transform the whole. That is who I am. That's sanity. That's the only sanity. The only sanity is to be a mad lover and to know that reality is pulsating with Eros in every second. Reality is Meister Eckhart kissing in every second. Literally. That's what science actually tells me. That's the electromagnetic, right, and gravitational and strong and weak nuclear dance of allurement and autonomy that's literally holding together reality and moving through me in every moment. But that's the conversation that I'm participating in every second. So what I want to try and do is just for a couple of minutes now, I want to try, if we can, to get just the beginning of this talk to God conversation. Let's go. We can do this. Okay, let's go. Okay, let's go. This is crazy. So imagine this. Imagine this. You're in a house with someone. You're living in a house with someone. Okay? You and this person, you're living in a house. Everyone got that so far? You're living in a house with someone. And there's lots of books in the house. So you're each reading books and studying. So far, so good? Good? You're in a house? Okay, you're in a house? Who's in a house? You're in a house? You got lots of books and you're studying. House book studying, okay. 2, you're meditating. You're meditating. So you're doing this deep, introspective, personal process. So one is you're studying the world. You're studying the world. Who are we studying the world in the house? Who's in the house with me? We're in the world. We're studying the world, right? All right. So are we ready? We're in the house studying. Okay. What else are we doing besides studying? What else are we doing? Meditating. We're kind of inside. We're introspecting. We're feeling our feelings. Who's feeling their feelings here? Anyone feeling their feelings? We feeling our feelings? We're feeling our feelings. Feeling our feelings. We're in the house. We're feeling our feelings. We're meditating. Right? And we're studying. Oh, there we go. There we go. Here's Kathy. Okay, great. Okay. So everyone in the house, now you're with two people, two of you in the house, feeling my feelings, right? Meditating. And what else are we doing? What else are we doing? What else are we doing but reading books? Now, what are we doing? We're not talking to each other. Two of us in the house, we're meditating, feeling our feelings, introspecting, and we're studying, but we're not talking to each other. We just sit in the house. Just imagine that we sit in the house, we keep studying, feeling our feelings, studying, feeling our feelings. We're not talking to each other. We're out of our minds. We're crazy. And there's two of us in the house. We're nuts. We're insane. No, we're not insane. We're studying third person knowing. We want third person knowing, third person perspectives on reality. We're good scientists. We're studying reality, studying, introspecting, meditating, knowing our feelings, not talking to each other. So we're doing all of first person knowing, all inside. Tattvam ase, where thou art that, we're madly enlightened, we are awareness, and we're everything. Right? Rupert Spiro, we took all your courses, man. We did great. Rock star, brother. Okay, we got it. We're studying 16 doctorates. We don't know who awarded them because we're not talking to anyone. Okay, but we're studying. Okay, wow. But we're not talking to each other. We are out of fucking minds. We are insane. Insane. That's what it means not to pray. It means that actually I'm full first person, full third person, but I think second person's a joke. Second person is not real. But actually, in the structure of reality, it's so beautiful. This is what we call a pointing out instruction. In the very structure of reality itself, reality has three dimensions. And if you look at the book, I've got it someplace on this desk, First Principles and First Values that Christina Amelon showed in the beginning. There's one of the first principles and first values is that reality is literally its fabric. It's first person, second person, and third person. Now, that's way before there's human beings. That's not like a human thing. That's the structure of reality is there's a first person interior experience. And a physicist like Richard Feynman says, right, he argues that there's some proto first person all the way down the evolutionary chain, whatever that means. There's something, there's no inanimate, right? The hills are alive, right? With first person. There's a first person, there's some experience of aliveness that evolved. Then there's third person, which is the kind of relationship between, right, how things are structured together, the organization, the laws of science, the laws of interior science. But then I realized that when I'm in a room with someone, everyone's aware of what I'm doing in the room, right? So stay with me, okay? Right? So then there's third person, there's first person, then there's second person. And second person means that all of reality is talking. There's a conversation. And the conversation, it's a conversational cosmos all the way down. There's an actual exchange of information. There's an exchange of value. There's lonely nuclei of proton and neutron, and they yearn, they are lured to electron, and then they create this new wholeness. Three quarks come together. They exchange actual information, and then something happens in the exchange. But that quality is called second person, and it's an actual quality of reality. And that quality of reality evolves all the way up the evolutionary chain. It actually is what incepts, so it manifests the evolutionary chain. The evolutionary chain is clearly coded with value. It's coded with mathematical value and musical value. And it's got the seeds of molecular value and ultimately of metabolic value, which then becomes moral value. which is the right relationship between parts, and then ultimately mystical value. But the whole thing is a conversation. It's a conversational cosmos, which means that there's a quality in cosmos of the personal. So I want to get this. It's huge. It's huge. Okay. So here I am in a room. Okay. So in this room, sitting with me right now, I'll just give you guys a little hint. So there's two people sitting in this room with me right now, Kathy and Christina. We're sitting like about 4 feet away from me. They think they're having a little conversation once in a while, which is kind of disturbing to me because I'm trying to focus and they think I can't track their conversation. That's a separate problem. We'll deal with that later. God. But the point is, why do they want to say anything to each other? Because it's an exchange of the personal. They want to say something to each other. Why don't they just think it? Right? Kathy just had a thought. Let me think the thought. Why do I have to tell Christina? Especially as I'm trying to do a mountain. But the reason she wants to tell Christina is because something happens when you share it. Isn't that beautiful? You're like, forget about Gafni. I want to share this thing. I really want to share it with you. Right? But that's beautiful. That's why we whisper things to each other. That's why reality is this series of whisperings. The Dharma is always right in front of us. We want to talk to each other. And if we would be in that house, meditating away, introspecting away, feeling away, doing third-person study away, but not talking to each other, we're out of our minds. We're insane because there's this desperate desire to exchange personally. And the personal is not personality, like superficial visions of the mystical tradition tried to say to us. It's not personality. Personhood is the structure of cosmos. From the personhood of protons all the way up to the personhood of human beings. Now, there's an evolution of personhood. So clearly, the personhood of protons has nothing to do with human personhood in the sense that they're utterly different from each other. The personhood of protons is just this proto-early aliveness. You wouldn't date a proton. You might love your dog. Boots is clearly in our house. Boots is a cat. It's the most popular figure in the house, bar none. Certainly more popular than I am, that's for sure. Okay. And everyone's like into Boots. Okay. Boots is an awesome cat. But I mean, lots of people have been through the house here. No one has wanted to date Boots because the nature of the personhood in Boots is different than the personhood in human beings. So there's an evolution of personhood for sure. Of course there is. But the personal, it's all personal. The nature of cosmos, it's all personal. It's not like you're taking this personally. Of course I'm taking it personally. It's personal. Now, you can get it wrong. You can get personhood can be defaced and degraded into kind of egoic grasping, right? That's not what we mean. Every great quality has its shadow form. So I can be grasping, for a kind of pseudo recognition and pseudo status, which is actually not about my personhood. But actually underneath the shadow version, there's this authentic, gorgeous, stunning, it's all about personhood. It's all about you and me, you, the space between us. The voice of the divine emerges from the space between the two cherubs, which means the voice of the divine, the voice of knowing, comes from the space in between these two cherubs in the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, above the Ark of the Covenant, where these two cherubs, when they turn and face each other face to face, the personal, out of the infinite intimacy of that personhood between these two cherubs, where the archetypes of personhood, from that space in between, that's where the voice comes. That's the temple. The temple is between us. And that temple starts with the space between numbers. And then it evolves from number to story. And there's a big conversation of how that works. That's not our topic right now. But the personal evolves and evolves and evolves and evolves until it explodes, right? In this face to face, which is where everything happens. And that face to face is precisely the nature of the relationship between myself and God. Yes, God lives in me, first person. True. Tatvamasi, thou art that. I am the field of meditative awareness. And my dear friend Sally Kempton did some gorgeous teaching about this. As does her colleague today, Rupert Spira. Rupert does a really good job of getting the sense of the awareness that has awakened me, and that I am an expression of that awareness. I'm a right? I incarnate. I am that awareness. Yeah, that's part of what I am. There's a first person. That's true. And there's a third person, right? I'm part of this field of dazzling complexity and law and systems theory and chaos theory. Right, let me just go find hold on there. Right, okay, complexity theory. There's systems theory, there's complexity, there's chaos theory. I'm part of that third person. That's all true. But at the very core, it's you and me. It's the personal. That's what prayer is. Okay, so let me come back. We're going to close now, but I want to tell you the story that some of us who have been together know, but we don't tell a story for information. We tell a story for evocation. We're trying to evoke something, right? So stay close, okay? So the text of a blessing in the Solomon lineage is, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, divine king of reality, queen of reality. And then the blessing concludes with, who invites me to eat bread, who I'm eating the 7 grains, I'm eating a piece of fruit, I'm performing a commandment. So there's the second part of the blessing, which refers to the specific activity that's being evoked. Then there's the first part of the blessing, which begins, blessed are you. So there was one master named Zushya of Anipol, the greatest of all masters, who would try and make a blessing, and he would go, blessed are you. And he could never get any farther than the word you, because he would go, Baruch atah, blessed are you. You, it's 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 you. And he would scream the name of God, because we are divinity in motion, screaming the name of God, calling out the name of the beloved with, yes, yes, oh God, yes, your name. That's the person. Reality is an intimate universe, and we are God's unique intimacy, and God is the infinite intimate that knows our name and who needs in some desperate way us to call her name. There's this mutuality of need. There's this mutuality of communion. There's this intimate communion that desperately wants to take place in cosmos between all of the yous, between you and me, between you and your yous, right? Between us in community, between us face to face, and between Moses and God and Jacob and God, who stand chapter 32 in the book of Genesis, chapter 32 also in the book of Exodus, and they stand panim el panim, face to face. There's an encounter. Reality is the encounter. Reality is the encounter. That's the nature of reality, is the encounter. It is the world philosophy of the encounter. It's the face-to-face encounter. It's the intimate communion. All of reality is about intimate communion. You don't try and achieve dictatorial power. Sauron. Imagine Tolkien's Sauron is on an island by himself and he's never going to see anybody else. Does he try and actually, invoke the eye of Sauron to have, megalomaniacal dictatorial control of all of reality? No, because there's no one to watch. There's no encounter. And it's only in the encounter that we're born personally. And that's what prayer is. Prayer is the affirmation, the declaration of personhood. And prayer is turning to he that knows my name, that personally addresses me. Prayer is turning towards the personhood of cosmos. God not as king, God as the infinite intimate, who meets him herself in shocking, sudden self-recognition in my face. Who's waiting for my whisper, who wants to whisper secrets in my ear. I mentioned before, Kathy and Christina are here in the room. I think Christina's gone. And Christina just wrote a book about her brother Jay, which I think you can, pre-order on it. Maybe someone will put the name of the book in the chat box, right? And the book is about, this very unique and beautiful, intimate conversation, between the divine the memory of the future that actually talks to Jay has this incredible series of experiences as a young boy, knowing that his death is coming, and he shares it with his mother and with Christina. So I'm personally addressed by the infinite. I'm intimately held. I'm intimately addressed. Now, do you know what it means to live in a world where we've lost the sense of being intimately addressed? Where I don't know that every place I fall into her arms? Well, what's left? So then there's no Eros. It means we live in a world without intimacy and without Eros. So now we've got to create pseudo-intimacies. The pseudo-intimacies of the hive mind, the death of our humanity. The pseudo-intimacies of kind of the monarchy, right? Where we have the kind of king dictator as is coming into style around the world because we're desperate for personhood. That's why we set up a king dictator. I mean, the reason people voted for Donald Trump was not policy. For multiple reasons, but one of them was he was willing to have a conversation. So he went down to Joe Rogan, he spent 3 hours in conversation, and Kamala Harris said, I'm not having the conversation. And Joe said, talk to me about cooking, just have a conversation with me. He said, no. And everyone had a sense that, wow, the liberal candidates are doing talking points. And this dude, he's going off script, he's talking to me. It's personal. I'm not talking about that was the right move or a bad move. Obviously, that's probably an insufficient grounds to vote for a candidate. That's not my point. That's not our issue here. Our issue here is that everyone missed it. I remember watching it 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago. It was 2017, 18. I said, the guy's going off script. And everyone's going crazy. Why is he going off script? That's terrible. And all the pundits. But I said, oh my God, people are going to love this. They can feel them. Now, forget about the fact that it could have been, forget about all the critiques. I got all the critiques. You can read them all every place. You don't need me to repeat them. That's not the point. The point is personhood is alluring. Why is everybody watching the relationship between Harry and Meghan? Who the fuck cares? Right? Really? Because we're allured to a story of personhood. Right? Why are all our songs love stories? Because we're allured to personhood. And the most, right? Whatever, no one's reading anything in the world today. No one's reading except for romance stories. Why? Personhood. Personhood is the quality of reality. And so it's not that, humans, now let's go back to the very beginning of our conversation. Humans created personhood. Personhood is an accidental expression of an accidental cosmos in which we are accidental tourists and there are only accidental conversations. No, it's an intentional cosmos with intentional conversations, and we have intentional journeys, and our intention matters. That's what personhood means. That's what prayer means. Prayer is a primary potency of human power. It's the power of personhood. It's what animates everything. Without prayer, there's no cosmos. The cosmos is praying, right? Abraham Cook opens, right, this obtuse essay on prayer, and he says, Nefesh mitpalelet tamid, I'm praying in every second. It's all personal. I'm always in a conversation. It's a conversation going on in my mind with all of reality and with all of my beloveds. Deepening the conversation is everything. Prayer is God's unique intimacy, turning back to source, the infinite intimate, and saying, wow, let's talk. And God is ecstatic. Oh my God, could we talk? Can I maybe end with this? I have this deep memory of taking walks with Betty Aaronkrantz. Betty, I don't know where you are in the world. Hoping you're not listening. And we were walking down by the Spoiten-Duyvil train station in Riverdale, New York, which is part of the Bronx, although no one in Riverdale admits it. And there were like some broken down trains there. And I was in an Orthodox high school, so no physical contact. We were trained in kind of this kind of seminary structure, which doesn't work well for 14 and 15 years old, but I was into that structure at that time. So we weren't holding hands. There was no contact at all. We just talked. Maybe 7, 8 times we got down to that Spoiten-Duyvil station, and we had these insanely gorgeous conversations. And I would say those were maybe the first conversations I felt at home in the universe. Like, Don't draw any implications about me having a hard early childhood. Yes, I did. Bracket that. Skip that one. Okay. But I remember these conversations and I was like, and I don't, it's not even what we talked about. It's like there was like we were face to face in conversation, and all of the sudden, the universe made sense. It made sense. It doesn't make sense unless there's a conversation. So Betty was the face of the infinite intimate addressing Mark. So we're all faces of the divine, but there's also a direct conversation to be had where I turn to she and she's listening. And she doesn't always answer. The text of the liturgy is, source of all blessings are you, God, Shomea Tfilah, who hears all prayer. There's not a promise of a cosmic vending machine God, right, who delivers in every prayer in every second. But there is a promise that every prayer is heard. No prayer is not inscribed in the heart of the beloved who's face to face with me in every second. Not to live in that space is to be in that house, meditating, introspecting, reading. But she's sitting right next to me. He's sitting right next to me. And we're not even talking to each other. That's insane. Sanity is to begin to know the personhood of Cosmos. And that I am personally addressed by the infinite intimate who knows my name, who intended me, who recognizes me, who chooses me, who desires me, who adores me, and who needs me. That's the truth of my reality. Anything less than the deep grounding in that realization will cause psychopathology. Because psychopathology means I'm not grounded in insanity, in the truth of my reality. I've split off the dignity of my personhood. Cha. Okay, Krista.
So good to be in conversation, to actually talk to each other and feel each other as we're having this conversation. And of course, the question is, how are we going to deepen this in our own personal lives? As we step into our week, how can we actually practice having a conversation with the divine, having this second person, beloved relationship with the divine? And so I want to we invite each other to pray together every day. We have a beautiful prayer group where we come together on Zoom every day for about 20 minutes and we pray together. It's every day at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time and in the weekends at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. You're welcome to join there. Next, I just want to remind us again, Eros Mystery School is happening. It's right around the corner. We're coming together in April. If you can't make it to Europe, please know that you can also participate online. Of course, we want to encourage everyone to get on a plane and be together. But if it's not possible for you, we will live stream everything so you can actually participate online. So if you go to erosmysteryschool.com, you can find all the information that you need. You're always welcome to reach out to Shahad if you just want to get on a call to have a personal conversation.